the conversations you have with your son, do they have to be fundamentally different from the conversations you have with your daughter? As in, when you have two neurotypical kids, and one is 12 and one is 14, then one is older than the other, and one is maybe a different sex and different gender from the other. But fundamentally, you can have a similar chat with them both. To explain a concept of whatever, bedtime or appointments or whatever, do you have to have a completely different approach with your daughter who has ADHD than you do, say, with your son?
I think the kind of script for our conversations is very similar in terms of the actual information I'm giving them. But the way that I check in with them and the way I make sure they're actually hearing me is different.
Right.
Because the ADHDer is really, and this is a common ADHD trait. My co-parent does this too, where you tell them a thing and they say, okay, and they seem like they got it. And it is not in their brain. It just went out. And that's not something that they can really control. What you can do, and there's some things, but there are some things you can do to sort of mitigate that. And so one of the things we do is, like, I'll walk up to I'll make sure she's not in the middle of something. I'll walk up to her. I'll say, can I talk to you? And she'll say yes or no. If she says no, we honor that. We come back later. If she says yes, she puts down her stuff. She looks at me. I get really close to her. I touch her if it's reasonable. And we're like together. And then I'll say, I want to talk to you about, the thing. Here are my ideas. What do you think? Wait for her feedback. Sometimes she'll say, I said we could talk about this now, but actually I don't think I'm here. Can we talk about it later? And again, we honor that. We go back, come back later. But if she has, an opinion, she'll tell me. And then usually I'll check in again a couple more times throughout the day or the week or whatever time frame, and just be like, remember, we talked about this. We agreed this. Still good. Because again, slow processing is a piece with ADHD that sometimes, like, initially it sounded like a good idea, but the more we think about it, we're like, oh, actually, I see all these problems. And for my son, I do something similar, but he is honestly a little bit more trustworthy. He has the autistic brain of, you tell him something one time and he will remember it for a million years. Like, it will never leave. So he hyper focuses. He has a lot of special interests. So with him, it's more about just getting his attention the one time, making sure he actually heard me, and then maybe checking in like half as often as I do with my daughter. And I should say for listeners, if it's relevant, that my kids are a little older than your kids maybe. I have an almost 9 and almost 7-year-old. So they do have a lot more communication skills at this age. But we've also practiced communication a lot, because when they get overwhelmed, those skills just drop, and they still need to be able to tell me why they're overwhelmed. And so, it's taken a lot of work to get to that point. It has not been easy, but yeah.
I suppose one of the interesting bits that you mentioned there is you're very respectful of the boundaries that your kids are able to express to you. So you must have spent a lot of time with your daughter, for instance, saying things like, it is okay for you to say when you're not available for a conversation, when you're not in the moment, or whatever you want to call it, when you're not really there, when you're in your own world, or whatever it is. That must have taken a bit of time to get to that point.
Absolutely. I think boundaries are really important for neurodivergent people to instill in our kids, and also for ourselves to have. If anybody listening to this happens to be neurodivergent, there is a common concern for neurodivergent kids is that they will be required or requested to assimilate into the kind of neurotypical norms, right? We have social norms, cultural norms, the way we speak, the way we talk, the way we gesture, how our eye contact is. There's all these things that you probably don't think about, that you do every day, that show that you're a neurotypical. And a lot of your autistic ADHD friends are faking it, faking neurotypicality in a lot of places, it's usually called masking, if you want to Google it, because sometimes it's just not possible or safe or reasonable for us to be authentically autistic or authentically ADHD, right? But that takes a huge toll. It is
Mhm.
exhausting and it is not good for us in the long term. And since I have two neurodivergent kids, I recognize that they will have to mask sometimes.
Mhm.
They will have to go out into the world and kind of fake being neurotypicals. But I want them to be able to say, to be able to know what their boundaries are and to state them to anybody. And I think that starts at home. If they can't tell me that this is not a good time to talk, how are they going to tell their boyfriend, their boss, their
Mhm.
whoever in the future? Um, and it also encourages their sort of own emotional intelligence that a lot of us
Mhm.
um, are divorced from our feelings because so say a lot of autistics and ADHDers when they're small children are very intense, like highly intense, huge
Mhm.
tantrums, especially kiddos who don't talk until later. We had tantrums with my daughter that lasted for hours,
Mhm.
hours of the day, um, because she was just emotionally overwhelmed all the time, all the time with sensory demands. And that will still exist in her as an adult. Like those sensory challenges won't, she might have ways to accommodate them, right? She might be able to reduce them, but they won't go away. And so for me as a parent, it was really important to teach her some emotional regulation, but also recognizing when she's about to hit that wall. Um, and if we mask all the time, we don't let ourselves recognize when we're
Yeah.
about to hit a wall. We just, and instead we come home from where I used to come home in the evenings and just fall over and be in a dark room for 4 hours because I was so overwhelmed and I didn't understand what was happening. And I don't want that for my kids. So for me, doing this early work of really taking the time, going slow, giving them extra processing time, checking in a lot, and practicing communication skills, like healthy ones, um, and healthy emotional regulation skills means that for me, I did my job as a parent and they can go off into the world and engage in relationships and build, friendships and work relationships and everything and be able to say, no, I don't want to do this and not feel pressured by neurotypical society to just keep saying yes, 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 yes,
Mhm.
even when they're past their kind of emotional sensory boundaries. So